Hello and welcome on board. You're watching Eye on Africa and I'm Clarisse Fortuné. Our top stories. The people of Kenya have spoken and President William Ruto says he has listened. The controversial finance bill will be withdrawn after people died in violent protests. The MONUSCO closed another of its bases in the Democratic Republic of Congo, this time in South Kivu province, but the entire peacekeeping mission has to leave the country by the end of this year. A deadly rainy season kills at least 24 people in Ivory Coast. Flooding and landslides are to blame, as well as irregular construction. After a day of protests that saw Parliament set ablaze and the death of at least 22 people, Kenya's President William Ruto called it an unfortunate situation and offered condolences. The violence broke out when large crowds of protesters assembled in the capital Nairobi and elsewhere to vent their anger at a new finance bill, which would see taxes increased. Today, President Ruto announced that he would not be signing this bill.
Having reflected on the continuing conversation around the content of the Finance Bill 2024, and listening keenly to the people of Kenya who have said loudly that they want nothing to do with this Finance Bill 2024, I concede, and therefore I will not sign the 2024 Finance Bill.
And protesters broke into Parliament, vandalizing the interior and setting parts of the complex on fire. And Kenya's Human Rights Commission says the death toll is likely to rise. Our correspondents went to Nairobi's central business district on Wednesday morning to examine the extent of the damage.
The Parliament gates are torn down. A strong smell of tear gas is in the air, and military personnel have been deployed around the capital. The day after violent protests rocked Kenya, employees are going back to the office. Many support the continuation of the protests, even though the contentious bill has now been withdrawn.
They have that hunger, they are suffering actually. And I think it's better the president listens to us and they try to adjust things. We are really suffering. And I think they might go back to the street, actually. That is what I think.
In this part of the city, dozens of shops have been destroyed, some were even looted. The damage is visible everywhere.
We'll start from scratch again, but we purposely blame the government now, because according to the Constitution, they need to protect life and property.
Human rights organizations have strongly condemned the use of excessive force by the police and Ruto's attempts to deflect blame for that violence.
There's absolutely nothing wrong with Kenyans getting onto the streets to voice themselves. This is a constitutional provision.
Today, Kenya's President William Ruto yet again is a candidate of the International Criminal Court because of the crimes against humanity that has happened in the country yesterday.
The president still hasn't acknowledged the full extent of the damage. He said that 6 people had been killed, while the Human Rights Commission has confirmed that the death toll is a lot higher. Despite Ruto refusing to sign the tax bill into law, Kenyan activists are still expected to take to the streets this Thursday.
Meanwhile, in Haiti, Prime Minister Gary Gunir has welcomed the arrival of the first contingent of troops that are part of a Kenyan-led UN-backed peacekeeping mission to restore order to the embattled Caribbean country. The one-year multinational mission will also involve forces from Benin, Bangladesh, Chad and Barbados, and has received sizable funding from Washington. But critics are concerned it won't be enough to overturn the gang violence that has seized the country. Elisa Herbert has more.
The Kenyan flag and with weapons in hand, long-awaited police reinforcements have arrived in Haiti, bolstering the new Prime Minister Gary Conny, who is determined to see the country freed from gang violence.
Finally, we can see that the international force is here to support us and our police force. So we're going to start working little by little to regain control of the country. But I want no one to doubt the purpose of the mission. The state will regain power and reaffirm its authority so all Haitians can live peacefully in this country.
The mission led by Kenya is the first any African nation has led outside of the continent. It was first requested to the United Nations by Haiti's former government nearly 2 years ago, but has faced multiple delays, in part due to Kenya's opposition parties calling for the country's security needs to take precedence before foreign commitments, and in part due to political turmoil in Haiti that was exacerbated nearly 4 months ago when gangs united to coordinate attacks on the capital Port-au-Prince, storming prisons and firing on the international airport. Gangs control 80% of the capital, and their widespread killing, kidnappings and violence has led to the displacement of over 500,000 people. Their leader, Jimmy Cherizier, who has constantly warned against the mission, recently suggested he is open to dialogue. But aid groups are concerned that the gangs will respond forcefully to the mission, that clear objectives have not been outlined, and that the Kenyan forces are ill-equipped.
Niger Defense Ministry says 21 of its soldiers were ambushed by terrorists near the country's border with Burkina Faso in Tillaberi. The country declared 3 days of national mourning. The insecurity is pushing tens of thousands of people in a Sahel region to flee towards coastal countries. A year ago, the military juntas now in power in Mali, Burkina Faso and Niger had pledged to improve the security situation. So where are we now? Here's an update.
Being a tailor in the Tahua region used to mean moving around a lot. Sewing, packaging and delivering to remote villages were part of this man's job. Today, because of the insecurity, he's set up in a temporary workshop, but not for much longer. He has decided to leave Niger with his family. The threat from terrorist armed groups is too great here, so they're heading to the coast. Residents of the Tillaberi region share the same sentiment. Today, several hundred of them gathered in Niamey to share their difficulties.
Recently, there's really been an escalation, an increase in attacks. The solution are in our authorities' hands. It's their sovereign duty to secure the people and their property. We can only make suggestions. The solution lies with the public authorities.
Despite warnings from various NGOs about the country's worsening security, the ruling junta claims a positive track record. In early June, UN agencies reported over 100,000 people fleeing terror in the central Sahel to Benin, Togo, Ghana or Ivory Coast. But this crisis puts pressure on the food supplies of these countries.
Food insecurity, which when combined with the security crisis, leads to or accelerates population movements. So there is a very strong link between food insecurity, the security crisis, and migration recorded from the Sahel to the coastal countries.
Multiple sources say this influx of migrants in the northern parts of coastal countries has led to several community clashes since the beginning of 2024.
The MONUSCO closed another of its bases in the Democratic Republic of Congo. The United Nations peacekeeping mission ended its presence in South Kivu province, handing over to the authorities. But Congo's government is pushing for everyone to leave by the end of the year. From Kinshasa, Emmett Livingston has more.
On Tuesday, Bintou Keita, the head of the UN peacekeeping mission in Congo, formally handed over military bases in the province of South Kivu to the country's interior minister. 7 bases and 15 installations have been given to the national authorities, and 3 other bases remain to be transferred. This completes the first stage of MONUSCO's withdrawal from Congo, where the peacekeeping mission is deeply unpopular due to a perception that it has failed to defeat armed groups. Congo's government is pushing for MONUSCO to leave entirely by the end of the year. But there are fears that this would leave a dangerous security vacuum. Congo's Interior Minister, Jacquemain Chabani, argues otherwise.
while the disengagement will see the transfer of MONUSCO's military bases and installations to the National Defence and Security Forces. The transition will be the period during which the government fully assumes the activities formerly carried out by the UN mission with the support of UN agencies.
MONUSCO began the disengagement process in January after coming under fierce pressure in Congo to do so. It is not yet clear when the remaining 13,000 peacekeepers will leave the provinces of North Kivu and Ituri, where they are still present. And in those provinces, armed conflict is still raging and millions of people have been displaced. On Wednesday, for example, 2 South African soldiers deployed in North Kivu to fight the Rwanda-backed M23 militia were killed in a mortar attack.
The rainy season in Ivory Coast is particularly deadly this year. Flooding and landslides in Abidjan left at least 24 people dead following a week of heavy rain, 4 times the usual volume in some cases. Justice Baidou, Julia Guggenheim and Mama Kamara reports.
After the rains, the firefighters are hard at work.
Behind, a gutter usually blocked by waste is causing the flooding in this area.
In the high-risk neighborhoods, the firefighters carry out an awareness mission.
Before going home in the evening, when you've finished working, you must unplug all devices. When it rains, don't let children play in the water.
In Abidjan, the usually dry water course where Suleiman's son played was submerged in just a few minutes, killing 3 children.
The first body was recovered there. It was my son. The other ones were able to escape, but the younger ones, aged 10, 12, couldn't. They tried to rescue them, but the worst happened.
The violent rainfall has also weakened some buildings that have collapsed. Others were destroyed to prevent further collapses. This architect blames the situation on archaic construction and informal settlements.
The collapses we witness are unfortunately very often the case of people who do not have the skills necessary to carry them out. There are no architects, there are no design officers directly involved in the collapses we're witnessing in the Ivory Coast.
Heavy rainfall is usual at this time of the year in Ivory Coast, but climate change is making the phenomenon more and more extreme.
We are witnessing increasingly a typical rainy season, to the extent that the volume of precipitation that is expected throughout a rainy season can be found in much closer periods.
The heavy rains are expected to last until August.
Thank you for watching Iron Africa. More news to come on France 24.